Hi everyone, welcome to the lab. I have another pair of KRK speakers for repair. The model is Rokit 5. Not so long ago I repaired a pair of Rokit 6 and you can see one of them there. I used them, I love them, and I picked up this pair, slightly smaller ones, for a giveaway price of $20 because something is wrong with them, at least with one of them. They are in reasonably good shape, some scratches here and there. Unfortunately, a scratch here on the tweeter. I'm not sure how bad is that, hopefully not too bad. And I don't want to risk powering them up. We know that they suffer from conductive and corrosive glue and failing electrolytic capacitors. And failing amplifiers potentially can put out DC voltage and kill the woofer or tweeter. So I don't want to risk that. Let's go straight to repair. Take them apart and have a look. Let's go. A quick look on the back. There are several modifications of this model. This one is RPG2, made in China. This is mains input, mains voltage selector, power switch. We have balanced inputs, TRS and XLR, unbalanced RCA input, volume control, and high frequency level adjust, slide cut or slide boost. Here we are inside. Looks quite similar to Rokit 6, maybe even identical boards. Here we have a mains transformer connected to the amplifier board. This is a preamp. And just like with Rokit 6, I don't see any corrosive glue on the preamp, but I can certainly see it on the amplifier board, and I can see bulging capacitors. Let's check the drivers. This is the woofer, and I can see 4 ohms written on it. I believe the tweeter is also 4 ohms, but it's not visible from here. So let's check the resistance at 1 kHz first. About 6 ohms, no problem, and I can hear the tone. And now the tweeter at 1 kHz. About 4 ohms, and let's switch to 10 kHz, also 4 ohms. And I can hear the tone loud and clear. So the drivers look fine. Here is the amplifier board, and we can see this nasty stuff in several spots. There is a small spot here on top of a resistor and a couple of links. And another small spot is here. This is where a woofer positive wire was attached. The tweeter positive wire was here, and both negative wires were here, and this spot is bigger and it is covering a few components and links. So we need to clean up this mess, replace damaged components, check electrolytic capacitors, and replace bad ones. I think these two are bulging. Sure enough, these big caps are gone. They are supposed to be 2200 microfarads, but we are reading about 60, and the ESR should be around tens of milliohms. I desoldered these two capacitors. They measure fine, but I wanted better access to this spot anyway. And it's a bit strange that both are 1000 microfarads 35 volts, but different dimensions. And I've seen the same in Rokit 6. I'm not sure why they use two different types on the same board. And the glue I usually remove by just scraping with a plastic tool to avoid damaging the board. It is quite brittle, so usually it's not a problem to remove it like so with some patience. There you go. And perhaps I need to desolder a few components to check them and have better access. Here we are after some scraping. Unfortunately, this resistor cracked as soon as I touched it. I should have measured it before scraping, because there is no good schematic available. There is some schematic, but so poorly scanned that it is almost unusable. And this resistor doesn't look very good either. So let's open the second speaker and see, maybe this area is not damaged so much. And here is the second amplifier, and yes, this spot is much smaller, and this resistor in particular looks great. I rebuilt this part, new 18K resistor here, and I also replaced this 4K7 resistor and this diode, which is a popular 4148 type. They were a bit corroded, and I don't have these 2K half a watt resistors handy. They are corroded quite a bit, still measure fine, but I would like to replace them. And because I need to order some capacitors anyway, I will order the resistors as well. They are quite cheap. And on the second board, these big capacitors are fine, but this capacitor is bad from here, and also this 100 microfarad capacitor from here is bad. And I'm tempted to order all capacitors. Small ones are quite cheap, let's say 15 cents a piece or something like that. And even if I spend a few more dollars on bigger ones, which are about $2 a piece, it's not a big deal. Here is a pile of new capacitors and resistors from DGK. It's time to rebuild the amplifier boards. All electrolytic capacitors are replaced, 2K resistors installed. Let's test. Let's check the power rails first. I plugged in transformer here. There is a silk screen on the board about this connector. We should see positive and negative 15 volt rails. Let's turn this on. This is the ground, and this should be negative rail. Oh no, that's positive rail, sorry. About 15 volts, and that's negative rail. About negative 15, no problem. I'm using a similar setup I showed in my video about Rokit 6. I soldered a few wires, low frequency amp input connected to function gen in the scope, and low frequency amp output connected to channel 1, and here we are. The generator puts out 100 millivolts peak to peak, 1 kilohertz, and we see about 3.5 volts output. And I prepared this power supply to provide unmute, but it was not needed. It was needed for Rokit 6 for the low frequency amp, but here it does not have any effect. I'm not even sure why this signal is present on this connector. There is really nothing to mute or unmute from the preamp. There are some circuits on the amp board to unmute in a few seconds after power up, but for that nothing should be routed from the preamp. And now testing high frequency amp using 5 kHz input. And now the second board, power rails are fine, and the low frequency amp is fine as well. And now the high frequency amp. It didn't work until I connected the unmute. The supply is still off. It's a bit strange. And I didn't see this when I tested the first board, because the supply was connected already. But I started testing the second board without even soldering wires for unmute. And the high frequency amp didn't work. So the supply is connected, but it is off. And it is showing, let's say, negative half a volt. And look, if I disconnect it, the output goes off. Go figure. So something is a bit strange with this unmute, but it's not a problem. The speakers are back together. Let's play a small piece of royalty-free music for testing. There you go. Thanks for watching. Bye.